Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel. A knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
Back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip. I don't need that shit cause I got my own now. I get hungry, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything I'ma have to bring the whole city out. And I probably end up laughing cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip. I don't need that shit cause I got my own now. I get hungry, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm your neighbor from just down the street. I also ride a motorcycle, so please check twice. Save a life. Motorcycles are everywhere.
For more information on sharing the road, visit mass.gov/RMV.
I know what you're thinking. Is this the booth, drafting the circuits, three-way theater, or the Kevin Jackson show? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I kinda lost track myself here on whobazoo.com. So, do you feel lucky, punk?
The movie, music, news, television promos, trailers and videos used in this production are protected by the Fair Use Act. Section 107 of the Copyright Act. 1. The purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is for nonprofit educational purposes. 2. The nature of the copyrighted work. 3. The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. 4. The effect of the use upon the potential market for, or value of, the copyrighted work.
Hear me. Hear me. President Obama. President Obama.
Mark, I told you had to stop contacting me like this.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, when can I come to the Presidential Center? Oh.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
This is blasphemy! This is madness! This is the booth!
Broadcasting from the City of Champions, Brockton, Massachusetts, with your host, Keith Sinista1 Hayes.
All right, it's your boy Sinista1 broadcasting live in the City of Champions. You are watching The Booth. It is May 5th. Cinco de Mayo is already here. We are awaiting Ken's arrival in the chat. Rob is already here with me for First Tuesdays. I want to thank my guests for last week for coming on the show, Kim Kim and Corey Langley. Thank you guys for coming on the show. My supporters and sponsors, Michael Douglas Barreto, MDB Electronics, Viana Marie, her music, you can find that anywhere. Tactical Target Systems, those are the targets that you see me with at the range. I love BostonSports.com. Kimberly Ann, Empowerment Photography. Underwatch Protective Services, Daryl Smith, reach out to him if you need any type of security. And then my buddy called Larry for handyman services, 774-826-6549. And as we get into the news booth, I have to stop and take time to mention. Oh, what happened here? I got to stop and give mention here. Boston Radio had another legend retire this week. I want to give big ups to an end of a radio era. Pebbles from Hot 96.9 has retired this week. This week is her last week on air. She took today off for her birthday, but she's going to close out Friday. So the radio station in the morning has been very emotional for the listeners. Pebbles started out many, many years ago at WILD, and then she went over to 94.5, and then everybody remembers when 94.5 cut her and Melissa from the show, and Romero stuck up for them and was very vocal on the air, and then wasn't soon after Romero was gone, and then this other station went down the dial, opened up, and the first thing they did was they brought Pebbles and Ramiro and Melissa over there, and they never looked back. They topped Boston radio for the longest time. So she now has started her own podcast called Positively Pebbles, where she just focuses on positive news. She doesn't talk anything that we see in the mainstream media. She focuses on positive news. It's something that's different. She puts it out every Sunday. It's a little 8-minute podcast that she does, and she hits her points. And she is now retiring from radio to fully focus on this podcast and what she does. And I just want to say big congrats to Pebbles, Hot 96.9. Great stuff. I'm just glad to see her go on to another endeavor and wish her all types of luck. We are waiting again. Like I said, we're awaiting Ken's arrival to the chat so we can get him in here. And I've got Rob here with me. There is a breaking news story in the sports booth. The breaking news story that just came out is Stefan Diggs has been found not guilty on all counts of assault and strangulation. And these are one of the things I talk about on this show. We've talked about this on the show, where it is, these are the types of cases that hurt women who truly are assaulted and are truly harmed and are not trying to make a cash grab because of somebody's status in the media or somebody's status in sports. When the first story came out, it was already sketchy from the get-go when this chef had released the story. And one of the things I've noticed, and I'm going to ask Rob because Ken's not here, back in the 80s and 90s, Rob, when you had these type of frivolous cases back in the day, you had a lot of celebrities and sports stars. They just picked a number and put it out there and said, okay, we're going to offer this number, and if they take this number, we're just going to settle. And what we're now seeing today, we're seeing a lot more people like this decide to go to trial now instead of just paying people off, because we're finding a lot of people now are shooting themselves in the foot because they put everything on social media. They share all this stuff, and then what happens is when the court case comes, they're using this stuff to contradict them or the things they say or what they do. They've got people who know them. As we saw in one of these trials, we saw people were watching the person's social media, and they called the courthouse and told the court, hey, he's lying. He didn't have a work meeting. The boss called and says he's lying on the stand. And they had to hold up the court case and bring the boss in as a witness to say, hey, I never called this guy in for a meeting. I'm watching this. How have you seen, this thing with, we're no longer seeing these frivolous cases be accepted. We're seeing more and more people fight and win these cases.
I mean, here's the thing. We don't know that this is a frivolous case. Mm-hmm. So there are two main points to address. Number one is, I agree with your first point that if somebody believes that they are not guilty of the offense or not responsible civilly, then they should fight it. And so if Stefan Diggs believes he did nothing wrong, then he made the right decision to not reach a settlement in this case. But when you get a verdict of not guilty, what that means is the jury could not find that there was sufficient evidence to prove every element of the offenses beyond a reasonable doubt. It doesn't mean they didn't believe her, and it doesn't mean that he didn't commit the offenses. So to be fair, of course, I haven't read the file, and I imagine nobody listening tonight has read the file. If you have, chime in and let us know. But the fact is we haven't read it, so we don't know how compelling the evidence was. We don't know why the jury, I assume there's going to be some news coverage to read, but I don't know how detailed it'll be. So, generally speaking, we don't know what the jury, why the jury reached its verdict. But because they found him not guilty doesn't mean that he didn't do it, and it doesn't mean that they didn't believe her. It means that they didn't find enough evidence. So we don't know at this point.
And he might. This is the guy who might have a little bit of the inside scoop on the breaking news. We're breaking down the breaking news. of Stefan Diggs, Ken, being found not guilty in all counts of assault and strangulation in the court here in Foxborough. The case here where supposedly, allegedly, he had strangled his cook, his professional cook that he had hired over a money issue. And they're saying that he is found not guilty, all counts, assault and strangulation. It's a breaking news story. One of the things I'm seeing right here is one of the things they're saying that wasn't good for her was that she waited. It was the time frame. But one of the things I was asking Rob before you came in here was I said, in this day and age, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, celebrities like this, they used to just pick a number and settle. They didn't want to go to, guys would say, you don't want to go to trial because you could lose your shirt, you could lose everything. But in this day and age, we're seeing a lot of defense attorneys like you are telling people, hey, let's go. We've got this woman's social media. She's posting stuff that's contradicting this. We're going to bring all this up. And we're seeing a lot more people like Stefan Diggs and stuff say, hey, no, I'm fighting this. I'm innocent, and we've got this other info from such. So I see you nodding your head. So have you heard about the breaking news? Is that already making its way around? Oh, we can't hear you, Ken. You're muted.
I apologize. As I said, that was one of the reasons I was kind of late trying to get in. There were a couple of very interesting evidentiary rulings that may have effect on cases, other cases are doing, but that's not relevant right now. Yes, there are two reasons. One, the amount of information that is out there about complaining witnesses has grown exponentially, and that's a boon for criminal defense attorneys. The same can be true with defendants. Defendants have this necessity of confessing everything online, drives us all crazy. That's a very important point. There's another important point. If you remember, Michael Jackson was accused of sexual molestation of certain children, and he bought his way out. That really put a bad taste in prosecutors' mouths, and they don't want to be accused of allowing rich celebrities off when poor people get the thin end of the wedge, as they say. So those two things are important. The other thing and you raised this point, timing is everything. You said that there was concern about the delay in her reporting. Absolutely. That is something all criminal defense attorneys will jump on ugly, because evidence gets lost, memories fade, you had a lot harder to get cooperating evidence and alibi. And that doesn't work well with juries. Juries don't like that.
Yeah, because they're saying that she supposedly, allegedly, what they're saying is just she had went to the police with this story after he had fired her. He wasn't happy with her services.
Right.
He had said he refused to pay her. He wasn't happy. He released her from her services, and then this is when she went and did what she did. So that's what one of the things they're bringing.
There's also a couple of things that apparently, again, this is fourth-hand hearsay, was not introduced at trial. We're very careful about that. That there were a lot of witnesses that gave contradictory stories. And that was a big problem. From my understanding, that could not be told to the jury. But if you're a DA and you know there are witnesses out in the wind who can't cooperate with the story, that's a problem. It was a circumstantial case at best, from what I'm being told. I have not reviewed the transcripts. Very clear about that.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Rob. It's brand new. This just broke.
And I understand if I understand correctly from coming in late from what Rob said, he was telling everyone, no, it's not that he's innocent, it's the Commonwealth was not able to prove their case.
Correct.
And that's a huge difference. We're not saying he didn't do it. We're saying there wasn't enough evidence to prove that he did it. And those are two different things. Lawyers have a joke. We say this when we talk about whether we're going to trial. We ask each other, is he factually innocent or is he legally innocent? Factually innocent is you got a witness who said he was working at a soup kitchen at Our Lady of Pain in South Boston when this crime occurred, and there's 4 nuns, 2 priests, and the Pope who can say that he was there. That's factual innocence. Legal innocence is there's the person that's murdered. These two had a long history of hating each other. My guy may have threatened to kill him, but no one saw him at the scene. There's no physical evidence connecting him with the crime. They found the weapon. It wasn't registered to him. The serial numbers are burned off. He's got no fingerprints, no DNA on the weapon. None of his clothes have blood. They search his house. They can't find any bloody clothing. He doesn't own any weapons. There's no ammunition that match the ammunition used in the crime. That's legally innocent. See the two?
Mm-hmm. I get it. I understand now. Let me see if there's anybody in the chat. I want to see if there's anybody in the chat that's jumping in here. I don't want to miss any questions on this. So like I said, this was breaking story. This was a breaking news story. I'm glad that Ken was able to come in here and jump on this because this was a pretty big story. So let's see here. Do I want to get in that? Yeah, let's get into this topic here also. Before we get into our main discussion, I'm not sure if you guys were familiar with the Supreme Court ruling that happened last week, 9-0. It's going to change license to carry laws forever. Supreme Court is pretty much looks like they're headed in the direction that Ken has been saying forever. We need to just have one law for license to carry ownership across the country. No more red tape of all these different rules and regulations. They have now ruled 9-0. Supreme Court has ruled that these states like Massachusetts, who are making you jump through 1,000 different hoops to get your LTC, they've ruled it's unconstitutional. And they're also dumping the ability for chiefs of towns and stuff to deny people in LTC just because they want to deny that person. So I don't know, Ken, have you heard? Because this is Massachusetts was about to have this big change to LTCs in June, but because of this ruling by the Supreme Court, it looks like there's a lot of stuff in this thing in June that was supposed to take off that's not going to take off.
Yes, this set off a nuclear weapon in the defense community.
Really?
One of the issues we're asking is it retroactive? And if it's not retroactive, what about cases that are currently pending? Does that mean that the state law that's currently pending is unconstitutional and they can proceed? And the Supreme Court didn't say anything about that. It's caused a lot of problems.
Really?
Again, the Supreme Court once again has said something groundbreaking and left a lot of questions unanswered, which is going to cause a lot of mayhem in my court, which is good and bad because I'll make a lot of money off of it. But that's one of the major issues the court was wrestling with. Is what about the full faith and credit section of the Constitution? Remember, under D.C. versus Heller and his progeny, the Supreme Court said that the individual had a right to carry a firearm, a constitutional right, but the state could impose reasonable restrictions on that, but didn't say what reasonable was. So the question was, what happens if, let's say, Sinista1, you hold an LTC, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Rob, I believe you hold one too.
No.
No, you don't. Okay. Well, I do. So let's say you and I want to go down to New Jersey for a gun convention, a firearm convention. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they have a shooting contest with various levels, pro, law enforcement, military, amateur. And the prize for each thing is a very nice big prize. And the prize for our division is a cruise in the Caribbean. And we want to go on that. So we bring our guns down to New Jersey to compete in the competition, okay? So, I don't have an LTC or the equivalent in New Jersey. Do you have one?
I'm not sure if my Utah covers me in New Jersey. I don't think so.
No, I'm asking, do you have the specific New Jersey right to carry?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
So we go down to New Jersey and we get popped by the state troopers and they ask to see our permit. We show them our Massachusetts LTC. Now, the question is, if I have a license to carry from another state, does New Jersey have to honor that?
So it's funny you bring that up because people here, I just want to give them a quick heads up. On my phone, I have what they call as USCCA. That's who I am insured through. I pay for them, so God forbid if something happens while I'm carrying, I'm covered. USCCA on the app, when I travel out of state with my firearm, as soon as I cross the border, my phone sends me an alert and tells me the laws of the state that I'm in and how I'm supposed to carry myself if I have a firearm. So, for example, I drove all the way to Mississippi one year with my firearm. I left Boston what I did was in New York, to drive through New York, I left my firearm in the lockbox and the ammo separate, because in New York, that's what they state. And the last thing you want to do is stop and get gas or stop at a hotel, and now you're in violation of the New York law. So most attorneys and stuff will tell you, hey, it's not even worth it. Just keep the stuff separate until you get down into a state. And usually it's like I get into West Virginia, then I don't have to worry about it. Once I get into West Virginia and head down south, I can carry.
Well, the reason I chose New Jersey, I chose it specifically. New Jersey does not allow you to carry a firearm without a license, whether it's in a lockbox or it's on your person. There are various degrees, like in Massachusetts. They will not honor out-of-state licenses. There was a New Jersey Supreme Court case that said, no, the full faith and credit doesn't apply to firearms. So now this one says, well, it sounds like we are now going to have to honor out-of-state licenses.
But they can set the tone and say if you're passing through, only if you're passing through, right?
No, I disagree. One of the things that I'm looking for in the decision, I read it, and it's a poorly written decision. It sounds like the federal government has to come up with rules and regulations that apply to all states, and all states must honor them. It sounds like that states have to honor an out-of-state carry permit as we honor an out-of-state driver's license. The one being is if you move to that state, you stay there for more than 90 days, you got to get an in-state permit.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to touch base on it because I did see that story, and that was a big story.
It's causing all kinds of pain. The Supreme Court is the most intellectually bankrupt and incompetent court we've ever had, because they say stuff, but they don't give the guidelines how you're going to enforce it. And that's causing a lot of problems because because I currently have a case right now, it's under appeal, where my guy had a carry permit from Tennessee, and I filed a motion to dismiss, and it was denied. And the SJ, now they throw out all of our gun laws. We technically don't have any firearm laws.
Right. So this is crazy.
The problem
stuff.
that you have with this is hypocrisy, right? Because for a while, the NRA and people of that side of the issue were talking about states' rights, states' rights, states' rights. You can't have the federal government making, one national policy. Every state gets to do its own law, responsive to its own people and the demands of the people, with regards to firearm ownership, firearm possession, carrying, safety measures, all those different things. Each state was supposed to be able to do its own. Now, with this opinion, you've switched 180 degrees differently, because now there is no states' rights, because now the Supreme Court is saying that, for example, Florida, anybody who wants to can carry a firearm. You don't need a license, you don't need a permit, you can just carry one. And there are other states that have done that. And so what the Supreme Court has said in this decision is those states get to supersede all the other states in the country that want to have some kind of a background check or some other safety measures, ones that would pass constitutional scrutiny. And so, it's interesting, right? I mean, are we supporting states' rights, or are we not supporting states' rights? Because this decision takes away states' rights, and it's the people who have always been advocating for states' rights that are now saying, well, not on this issue, no states' rights on this issue. So it's legal hypocrisy. And so I would like to see some clarity on that issue. I know Ken is looking for, guidance on, how do you apply this rule? What can states do? That's the question of the day, because if you have to follow, let's say, you have a couple of states out there that have pretty much no rules. Everybody goes and uses that state's law, and then all the other states have to follow it. That seems problematic to me. On the other hand, I understand the legal argument in favor of the position. That's why it was 9-0. I understand that. That's why, we need to see what kind of guidance there is, because you can't, if you have a state that's having violence issues and wants to have certain safety standards, how do you deny them that? But on the other hand, then we also have the full faith and credit, which has always been around. That's been around since the birth of the nation. We have to honor that too. And they're diametrically opposed on this particular issue. So that's what I think is the interesting thing, to see how that's going to get resolved. And there'll be a lot of cases coming out of different states through the system, through the state systems and the federal system, and it'll go back up to the Supreme Court, where they'll pick and choose, which circuits or which states they feel, have hit the standard on the head, and then they'll adopt that at some point. But it'll take years, maybe, for that to be resolved. That's my concern about this.
It's going to take decades, not years, decades.
I'm being kind, yes.
You're being very kind. I'm telling you right now, I'm looking at this, and I am telling you, someone's been practicing criminal law for 30 years. They have thrown a nuclear bomb in there, and it'll take decades to get this mess sorted out. Yeah. The problem is, and Rob was too polite, as he always is, he's the diplomat of our crew here. The U.S. Supreme Court, in the old days, they looked at a holistic approach. They looked, how do we craft a decision that's going to fit, or not fit, that's the wrong term, apply equally to all 50 states.
Right.
The current Supreme Court is only concerned with 2 or 3 circuits, and they're all in the South, and maybe Alaska. That's it. They're crafting legislation that benefits or is good for this, basically the states of South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Oklahoma, Texas, maybe Nebraska and Iowa on certain issues. That's about it. And North and South Dakota. That's all they care about. They're drafting that helps them screw the rest of the states. And that's the problem, because if you look at the decision that you're talking about, Sinista1, and you apply it only to those states, it makes perfect sense. Oh, this is real easy. But if you
I shared a video last week.
Or California, it makes no sense, and they don't care.
Yeah, I shared a video last week that I allowed people to watch. It was about 12 minutes, and it broke it down state by state and who was going to be hurt. And, of course, Massachusetts was mentioned a ton of times because we have this law that was going to kick in on June 1st here.
Right.
Where everything was going to change, and you were going to have to take a class and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, some of the stuff that people were upset about, I'm like, okay, we were already doing that. I says...
Right.
We used to when you go to your gun class and get certified, the instructor would give you the paperwork,
right,
and all of that stuff. Now it's no longer that. Now it's up to them to upload all that stuff to the government server, and then the government is going to send you your certificates and stuff. I have no problem with that, because that's exactly what they did with our DOT physicals. They took that out of our hands of self-certifying ourselves after we got our physical. Now the DOT doctor has to upload all of that DOT info into the government server, and then we're registered digitally. So
right. The reason they want to do that is a lot of people were self-certified because they had a buddy who said, yeah, tell them like you took class from me, and that's what they were doing. Now they're requiring the instructors who are licensed by the state. Ironically, when I took the gun class, the firearms safety class instruction, it was taught by an NRA guy. You want to hear that ironic thing? He was a firearm shop owner who did these classes on the side. I paid him like $75. I took the class from him, and it was an excellent class. And he was, and I remember I had an interesting conversation with him. It's like, because he's a big NRA proponent. He goes, yeah, I have to admit it's somewhat hypocritical. On the one hand, I'm saying we shouldn't do these classes, yet on the second hand, I'm doing them. So we had an interesting conversation.
Good conversation, guys. I wasn't expecting to get that much out of you guys on this one. I didn't know you guys were really tight on this one. So that's
Sinista1, that was a grenade that was thrown into the legislative community, and everybody was in there.
And the funny thing is mainstream media, that 9-0 vote was quietly under the radar. Not many people were really talking about this thing, and I'm like, this is big. Oh, before I get into the other topics, I'm looking at Rob. Rob, I did see a recent story, and I don't have it in my notes. I just saw a recent story about JAG. Judge advocates now, they are talking about having them handle civil cases. I don't know if you saw that come across your board there of the mainstream media you watch, but I guess there's some change coming, and they want to have judge advocates now handle certain civil cases in regards to the type of crime that they've committed.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, first of all, judge advocates have always been involved in civil stuff. That's not a change.
Okay.
That's been from the dawn of time.
So why are they making it seem like this is new? Why?
Because they maybe they're looking at an area that hasn't been part of it before, and that might be like a new corner that they're exploring. But for example, obviously most people think about judge advocates is doing courts martial. So you've got prosecutors and defense attorneys, and that certainly is a big piece of it. But that's not the majority of judge advocates' business, because you've got to do things like labor law, you've got to do contracts, you've got to do environmental compliance, you have to do ethics. There's so many things that they do. And so judge advocates, we have, for example, at the Legal Services Agency, I worked there twice in my career, stationed located at Fort Belvoir in Virginia, and the Legal Services Agency has what's called the Litigation Division, the Contract Appeals Division, the Environmental Division, and you have judge advocates as well as civilian attorneys, doing significant work with the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice officially represents the United States, legally speaking. And you have judge advocates who basically get assigned those cases, working with those members of DOJ to handle those particular contracts or environmental issues, what have you, labor issues, pertinent to their jurisdictions. So maybe they're looking at something to expand on that. I haven't seen that, but
I'm not sure.
the idea of
Ken,
doing civil law is nothing new.
Yeah, there was so the Trump administration had announced it. I forget. I should have did my homework on it. I don't know if you, Ken, have you seen what it was? What the story was?
I heard this third-hand hearsay from people in some of my groups, and again, I haven't read the directive. What they're all squawking about and complaining about is they're going to start getting involved in defending Trump's action that in civil court.
Oh, okay.
That's what they're. So let me finish. What apparently is Trump and his family being sued for various violations of federal law, specifically the Hatch Act and its progeny, which is an anti-corruption probe. And now what they want to do is use civil lawyers from JAG to come in and defend them on national security grounds. At least that's what I'm hearing. Don't quote me on saying that.
No.
This is what I heard this in my group from someone who claimed he talked to an active duty JAG officer.
So I just pulled the story up. I just pulled the story up, and it says, recent legal context. A 2026 ruling has now confirmed that the Justice Department can use JAG lawyers to prosecute civilians, specifically as special assistant U.S. attorneys, provided that they adhere to specific regulations. That story is coming out of investing.com.
Well, that's nothing new.
That's nothing new.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine named Dave Humphreys. He's a lawyer and a bar advocate, but before he found the light, he was a Marine Corps JAG officer. And he was seconded to the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C., and he worked in the federal district in D.C., working for the Parks Department, prosecuting people who committed crimes in the various U.S. parks around D.C. and Virginia. Most commonly were drug dealing, certain sex crimes, and smuggling operations, cigarette smuggling operations. But he was an active duty U.S. Marine working in the JAG Corps. He was seconded to the U.S. Attorney's Office over there. That's nothing new. They do that all the time.
Yeah. So
Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. When that happens, you are still an active duty U.S. military officer, but you come under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Attorney's Office. You report to the U.S. Attorney.
That's right. You wear civilian clothes and you report to the supervising U.S. attorney or assistant U.S. attorney for those cases. So it's just kind of, but normally there's a military nexus when you do that. For example, if you're going to prosecute cases from parks, it's because they're on federal land, military land or something like that. So it's not just randomly taking people to divide the workload. There's a reason for using them. There's a nexus to their installation, to their command. So to expand this into some kind of defending the Trump administration to these charges, that would be a gross misuse. I can't imagine that would ever go through. The Department of other than keg breath, but the Department of Defense should be up in arms about that. That is an absolute abuse of personnel, abuse of resources. That should never fly legally. It's just a question of whether the Pentagon stands up to it, because that's that would be way too far. I have enough questions about using JAGs on the immigration stuff, because that's also not a nexus to the military service, and so that also goes too far. This would go even further than that. So I can't imagine that would fly. As
I read the story, Rob, something I'm seeing mentioned here quite a bit in this article and why some are against it, the Posse Comitatus Act. is being
Yes.
mentioned quite a bit, Rob. So
Okay.
you want to explain that, Rob, what that is, and why they're
Well,
mentioning this?
That's a law that's been around since the Civil War, and it basically says the military cannot be involved in domestic law enforcement. I mean, that's the simple way to put it, because there's hundreds of years of stuff that goes along with it. But in the sake of moving the conversation forward, it basically means that all military are prohibited from engaging in domestic law enforcement. And so the military obviously has a mission of defending the homeland. If the homeland is under threat, then the military conducts defensive operations, military operations, but they cannot conduct law enforcement operations. The exception would be the National Guard if they're under Title 32, meaning under the governor's control. They can't do it under federal control.
Gotcha. So I just sent you guys the link so you can follow up on this. It was a pretty interesting story, and I just saw that. So and speaking of stuff here, let's get into, before we get into the Iran stuff and all this other crap. I'm struggling because, first of all, one of the things I want to talk about, people, is that I see a lot of people sharing news stories from sites, and me and Rob, we've had this discussion off air. We have a lot of websites out here that they're satire. They legally say on their website that it's satire. So legally they're doing exactly what they're doing, but they're putting stories out about Democrats and other people to help spread misinformation, because I hate to say this, some people are just too fucking stupid to read the website that says it's satire. And then you have, for one site that puts out a satirical story that's not true, it's satire, you have 100 MAGA nitwits who share the story, and they claim this story is real because they don't read that the site is satire. And I know satire, Saturday Night Live, it's funny stuff. They killed Kash Patel last weekend. That's satire. We get it. We love it. We understand it. But I feel like, Rob, you have some extreme right-wing groups out here who are utilizing the legal term of satire, but I think they know damn well what they're doing, Rob. They know that they have a base that doesn't care, that doesn't give a fuck, and they're going to believe everything that's put out there is true. It's scary, and I don't like it. I know we've talked. I'm going to let you talk about this, Rob, because you talk about it after every show, to be informed. How can you be informed when you're putting satire out there as misinformation and people are believing that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this. First of all, we always tell people to be informed, and what we always say is be informed, read multiple sources, but make them credible sources. And I like to read sources of different sides, right? I want to read both sides. I want to read all sides. If there's, depending on how many sides of an issue there are usually more than two. I want to read different perspectives, because I might be convinced of my position, but that doesn't mean I can't be better informed by reading other positions. I might not change my mind, but I might be better informed about the issue. Or sometimes I might modify my viewpoint if somebody makes a really good argument. That's okay. That's called intellect. And the challenge that we have is that there are people out there that are exploiting the fact that a lot of people just, read whatever pops up on their feeds on social media. And, if you don't take the time to figure it out, for example, on the bottom of most people's laptops, you can get click on some nondescript link for breaking news or what have you. And some of those articles will be from CNN or Fox News or Axios or whatever. And, those are, we may agree or disagree with their editorial positions, but those are news sources. But I also see things from something called the Western Journal, which to me is all nonsensical, right? When I see a story from that, I say, well, this must be one of those satire things. Maybe it's like The Onion or some of those other ones. But it doesn't really say that. I think they're actually just out there pushing the envelope, because right now, anybody who wants to, you could put crap up there and just claim you're a journalist, right? Anybody can be a journalist now. Everybody with a cell phone takes a video and posts it and calls themselves a journalist. Doesn't mean you have the intellect or the understanding to actually be a journalist, but you can call yourself one. And so, that's my concern. And to your point about where this is coming from, you've got two groups, right? You have what I call the political engineers, the people behind Project 2025, the people behind the MAGA policy initiatives, the people that are, working with the Trump crime family on national policy or what have you. And so, on one hand, they, like you say, Keith, they know the truth and they know what they're doing. They're manipulating people with either what could best be described as false stories or just exaggerated stories where you can have maybe a little bit of defense as to what constitutes exaggeration, what is too far, in that world. And then on the other hand, you have the willfully ignorant. And I'm sorry to use a pejorative phrase. I try to be respectful of people, but you have, a segment of society, and it's left and right. So I'm not picking on one side, although there seems to be more from the MAGA side. But the radical left can be willfully ignorant too, and I'm sure we can identify some issues at another time. But the problem is you have people who just accept that. They don't try to find the truth. They find something because they want to agree with it, and then they quote it, like the people who infect your page sometimes, where they can quote something that's not real. And somebody, if you've taken the time, use your brain, read multiple sources, credible sources, and you can figure out, okay, that's not right. But these people don't do that. So you've got two sides of it: the people pushing the crap out there that know better, and the people who are, the consumers of it that choose not to know better.
Ken, anything you want to add to this?
Yes. Scientists have something they call confirmation bias.
Right.
And what that means is, what they are concerned about is you will get, if you're conducting an experiment without appropriate safeguards, any of the information that tends to support your thesis will be placed higher in your brain than things that don't. That's why they have something called the double blind. What the double blind is, and I go all geek on you and I apologize, is when they're trying to prove something, they set up one group. Basically, like fixed pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals will have groups, and they'll give one group the medication to see if it's going to make any difference in the disease they're studying, and one group will give them a sugar pill or a placebo. The scientists don't know who's given what. There's a separate group that assigns that, and they are not allowed to talk to them. So basically, everyone's given a number, and so patient number 1 is given pill 56E. Then patient number 2 will be given pill 56D. We don't know which is placebo and which one is 56D or 56E. One of them is going to be the placebo. But the scientist doesn't know it. So he has no idea who's getting the placebo and who's getting the actual medication. So that way, when you get the results, you don't know if the results are supporting you or against you. You may get 50% of the people who the medication makes absolutely no difference to you whatsoever. Well, those 56 people could have been the people that got the placebo. Of course it doesn't, because they didn't get anything. Long road, small farm. What I'm saying is today, we don't have the double blind. We have people giving out information that you're looking for. You're looking for affirmation, not information. Those are two different things. Okay? Something I learned many, many years ago in my political science class. Affirmation versus information. Information is what, since when you talked about, you said the Supreme Court came out with a 9-0 decision regarding this case. And we went over some of the things they've said in this case. That's information. Affirmation is what Rob and I said everything out after that. We gave our opinions. Okay? Which is fine. That's what you're supposed to do. The problem today is I'm going to restrict this to what we call traditional media outlets. I'm not talking about some guy in his basement who thinks he's a freaking journalist because he saw the Joe Rogan show last night. In the old days, you'd have the rule was 2 confirmations on a story, 3 confirmations on a breaking story. Meaning you needed 3 independent confirmations that the facts are true. Now they don't even do that. They just go with what they got, and that's becoming a problem. For years, I was a reader of the Wall Street Journal because despite their opinion page, which was extremely right-wing, their journalism was really good. If you want to know stuff about the financial markets, you read the Wall Street Journal because it's good, bad, and indifferent. They would say things that would make your average left-wing Bernie brother, me, want to climb the walls. And then in the very next article, they'd say something that would make all of your right-wing, Reaganite, no regulation guys climb the wall. And that's why they were so respected, because they pissed off everybody repeatedly. Everybody read the article because they knew the information was accurate. After they got sold, I'm not going to say who they sold to, that went downhill. But that's, again, it's very hard today to get information that is anywhere near the level it was in the 70s and the 80s. And I blame Reagan for that because he took away the fairness doctrine, but that's an issue for a whole nother show. So now what you don't have news, you have newstainment. You have news entertainment. That's what you have.
Ooh,
and that's why it's important to go out and read, as Rob has said since he came on the show, God knows, last century, he's always advocated that you go out and you read multiple sources. He bangs that drum, he bangs that drum so often, there's a hole in it.
He does. Real quick, happy May the 4th was yesterday. That's why I have this on. And today is Cinco de Mayo, but I'm upset because the White House decided yesterday to steal the intellectual property of Disney, of all companies, and posted a picture of Trump as the Mandalorian, which is complete hypocrisy since you talk all types of shit about Disney and everything, and then you steal the intellectual property from May the 4th. Then you turn around today, and I just sent Robert because he hadn't seen it yet. Today's Cinco de Mayo. You would think that they would do something polite for Cinco de Mayo. No. They put this picture up on the White House, which is Hakeem Jeffries and our Speaker of the House sitting in front of the Mexican border with a sign that says, "I love illegals drinking tequila." And it's just, it's super unprofessional. For me, it divides the society. It's borderline racist. I just can't take it anymore. I'm just done with this whole thing. I'm losing a lot of energy over this. Go ahead, Ken.
Before you break out your soapbox, I'm going to ask you two questions. And they're unfair questions. I'm setting you up. I'm admitting that ahead of time. Even though we've been friends for over 30 years, I got to do this. What does the Cinco de Mayo holiday celebrate?
Cinco de Mayo? It was a incident in Mexico that they celebrate that had happened on May 5th, the independence, right? It's kind of like their Independence Day.
Well, you could be technically true. I'm gonna give you the answer. I'll ask Rob to give you a decision. Cinco de Mayo is the celebration of when the Mexican nationals overthrew the French-installed emperor, the nephew of Napoleon, and reclaimed Mexican sovereignty. It's not their original Independence Day. The original Independence Day was independence from Spain.
Oh, okay. All right. I always thought it was Cinco de Mayo.
Does he get the points for that? Because he did,
I think it's close enough, yes.
Okay, so
it's associated with that independence, yes.
Okay, so all right, so you got a point there. You did much better than I thought you would. Well done. But I had a question because you mentioned the Cinco de Mayo thing, and quite frankly, it's just juvenile. It's it's clearly a cartoon. But you mentioned borrowing the Star Wars copyright on a May the 4th thing, and so if Trump was the Mandalorian, does that mean J.D. Vance was Grogu? Because I thought he was Tattoo from Fantasy Island, and now he's Grogu. So J.D. Vance going deep.
God, he went there. So we're at 7:40.
On South Park, he's Tattoo.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, but I got my second question. Who created the Cinco de Mayo holiday?
Who created the Cinco de Mayo holiday?
It was created.
Not Coors. Corona, I meant to say. Corona, not Coors.
You're wrong, but good guess. But it's a beer company.
Really? I didn't know that. I never knew that.
The Cinco de Mayo holiday was created by the Budweiser Beer Company, or the Budweiser distributors in California.
Holy crap!
Because they were trying to break into the Hispanic market when they drank what? Tequila. Mexicans didn't drink beer. They drank tequila.
That's right. Oh yeah.
So they created this. Someone in their advertising department looked down and found this minor event in Mexican history, and created a whole advertising campaign around it.
I'm still convinced it was Corona.
It was Budweiser. Budweiser in the 60s.
I'm going with Corona.
They lost it though, because Corona. When I hear Cinco de Mayo, I think Corona all
Well,
day,
yeah,
every day.
Corona has become the beer of Mexican peasants. Yes, well, that was the Mexican FU to Budweiser. So that's
don't get
it.
me wrong, I don't drink Corona, but I'm convinced they started it.
So
well, I only drink. Like the good Jew that I am, I only drink German beers that Rob recommends.
We got about 15 minutes left, so we got to really get into some of this other stuff now. I got to ask, but before I get into it, I got to ask Rob and you guys' thoughts on the 6-3 SCOTUS decision in regards to the voting laws having another. We've already talked about one major. I see Ken about to go full diesel here. I'm gonna let Rob go first because I know Ken is. You guys' thoughts on the 6-3 decision?
I think we have to let Ken go before he explodes.
All right, we'll let you go first, Ken. 6-3 SCOTUS, and it's another historical vote that has changed. Oh man, go ahead, Ken.
Okay, full diesel alert is now in full force and effect. Okay, you have been warned. So I want to hear comments about me going all crazy and all geek at the same time. You've been warned. Okay, now quick history. So in 1965, after painful negotiations, the U.S. Congress enacted the Voting Rights Act at President Johnson's behest. He then signed it in 1965. It's a wonderful show of him giving a pen to Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders. There is a section in the Voting Rights Act called Section 2. Yes, we lawyers are very creative in naming things. What that said was no state could enact any law for any reason that would dilute minority representation, even if the state had a legitimate legal purpose for doing it. And it also allowed the federal government to come in and say, you enacted this law, we think in our opinion that it's diluting minority representation, you got to prove that it's not. Okay? That may sound like a very minor thing, but it's basically an anti-gerrymandering thing. It's been very powerful for creating minority-only districts and allowing preventing legislators from basically what we call slicing and dicing or cracking and stacking. Those are two terms when you crack a district up and you stack it in with your people. For whatever reason, the Supreme Court, 6 justices says, well, racism is over. We had a problem. We don't need it anymore. So we're going to gut that and now say that that you have to prove the state is intentionally doing this, which is virtually impossible. Unless you have some kind of tape going in a back room someplace, it's not. It gutted the Voting Rights Act and allowed states to gerrymandering minorities out of existence. This is what they did in the Jim Crow eras, among other things. Louisiana recently called off their elections so they could redraw their maps. Okay. That's what happened. And I'm being very calm. Now I'm going to go full diesel. Mofos, are you freaking goddamn stupid? You had Donald Trump telling people to redraw the maps to say, we need more Republicans and less people of color, because if not, I'm going to jail. Now, what happened, Texas tried this crap, and what happened, California, New Jersey, not Massachusetts, California, New Jersey, I think Illinois, did this, and they ended up gutting, more Democratic votes. So this is a net loss. This is, when we look back at tipping points in history, there's always a tipping point where you see a mass building up and it's getting nowhere, and all of a sudden something happens and it tips the scales in one direction or another. Mark this day, Sinista1 and R Squared, this is the goddamn tipping point. Because now what you're going to see every blue state redistricting their maps to cut out rural voters. And that's very easy to do. The rural voters, except for maybe a couple of states like Montana, which has one district, or Vermont, which has one district, you're going to find what pain looks like. And here's the second thing. Let me give you a dirty little secret. You ready for the dirty little secret?
Mm-hmm.
Up until the most recent election, Hispanics have been breaking Republican. They tend to be Hispanic voters tend to be very conservative. They're very family oriented. They're very church oriented. They are, believe it or not, anti-immigrant. Although I can't. God, someone's got to explain that to me. Black voters were beginning to break Republican. At least certain of them. Certain the black middle class and now become the black upper class was breaking Republican. You saw a lot of that, and that allowed Republicans to avoid the racism card and also to gain inroads in traditionally Democratic controlled population. Guess what just happened? The Republicans have played the reverse card against themselves. And now they're losing all these people. A lot of the and here's the important thing. A lot of the, we call high-end donors are now leaving the Republican Party and either giving to Democrats or giving to independents, which is worse for the Republicans than Democrats, and I'll tell you that why in a second. So they're losing money, they're losing votes. The most important thing is now the Republican Party is now all these traditional guys are being primaried by Trump or his people. None of them has ever won. Not one person who has been at least in office for 2 terms and has been primaried by a Trump voter has won. Why is that a problem for Republicans? Anyone care to guess?
Well, we saw it in Texas where they did that same thing. In Texas, Republicans actually lost to a Democrat.
Right. Why? Because what happens if you're spending money in your primary, and Rob and I have worked on elections. It's all about, when you're running a primary, it's all about resource management. You want to have a clean primary, but you don't want to spend a lot of money. You don't want to trash the other guy because you get a party unity. So what's happened, Republicans are now spending incredible amounts in the primary in safe states, and they don't have money for the general election. The other problem is, and I said this before, and people ignored me and thought I was crazy, MAGA isn't a product of the Republican Party.
Nope.
They're not. They're an independent movement. So when their people lose, they don't feel any necessity to go and vote Republican. They stay home. The problem is, in order to get the MAGA votes in the primary, you go way to the right and you piss off everybody who's in the center of their party. Either they vote Democratic, they vote for an independent, or they stay home. So now you have 2 wings of your party. If you look at the MAGA as one wing, look at the moderates and the centrists and the corporate Republicans one, and then you've killed off 2/3 of your own party. How the hell you go out and compete with independents with that? So yes, this will be a great win for the states of Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, maybe North Carolina, maybe, I'm not sure. Definitely not Virginia, Texas, Oklahoma, North and South Dakota, Iowa, Idaho, and maybe Tennessee and Missouri, although, but you know what all those states have in common, with the exception of Texas and Florida? They don't have a lot of population.
Yeah, it's all farmland.
So,
Rob,
you want to add to this? 6-3?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Ken laid it out quite well. I would just add a couple of points to it, so I don't want to repeat all of that. There are 2 things that I see. Number one is, the traditional gerrymandering that had been going on for decades, and it's disgusting and it should be illegal. And now the Supreme Court says it's not, but they're wrong. The fact of the matter is that, when you create these gerrymandered districts, these safe districts, then a couple of things happen. Number one, you erode democracy because there's no real campaign. The incumbents don't have to do anything. They have to just win their primary, which obviously when you have MAGA primaries, that puts the game in play a little bit. But normally when you do this, the incumbents don't have to do anything. They don't have to earn their seat, which means they do whatever they want, including nothing. They don't represent their constituents. And they just keep getting reelected because when you draw these districts, you do it with 65, even 70% favorable votes, which means even if you have a tide of opposition, you can't overcome 65, 70%. What happened now when they redo these maps, in order to make more seats, you have to further dilute the vote. And so now in some cases, they might be 55% instead of 65%. That is overcomable. That is, if you have a wave election, if you have an angry electorate who is anti-incumbent or frustrated or sick of MAGA and the abuses of power and the erosion of democracy and Trump's corruption and all that, then it doesn't take much to flip those seats.
That's right.
Now, so the good news is for Democrats, it actually makes it a little bit easier for them to do better in this midterm. Long term, it doesn't help because once the anger passes, and it always does, then they go back to having easier elections, not safer, but easier because they still have the majorities. So that's the interesting thing, that this may, in the short term, be not so much of a benefit to Republicans if the electorate stays the way it is now 6 months from now, when we're dealing with the midterm elections. The other problem that you have with it is, I mean, obviously we could talk about the blatant unfairness of it, but the other part of it is, as I was looking at the states that have already done this, and more will after the Supreme Court case, but when I've looked at that, is Republicans created more seats than Democrats did, because California said, well, if Texas does it, we'll do it and we'll balance. They stole 5, California will take 5, it'll balance out. Virginia got in the game. I don't know what's happening with that legally. It's still in limbo. But when you look at the states that have done it so far, there's a net gain of about 10 Republican seats. And so, what does that do for the midterm? I don't know. We have to see what other states, what type of crafting they do, if they try to do it for this year, for this cycle or not. And, the challenge that you have is the more liberal populations are clustered. They're not spread out. They're clustered. They're clustered in the big cities. They're clustered in certain areas. The conservative vote is more spread. And so Republicans have the advantage if you create these grossly unfair districts that don't represent the people, then Republicans have the advantage in doing that until such time as population, maybe after the next census, we see some population shifting. But this does technically work to their benefit. This is why Project 2025 had this as a major provision of what they were doing. And they've been doing it for decades. It didn't start with that. So I do have concerns that this could, in the short and long term, result in a net gain until such time as voters get their blanks out of their butts. Because at some point, Republican voters, because they're not all MAGA, MAGA's only about 25-30% of the party. Correct. Depending on where you are, it goes up and down a little bit. But these mainstream Republicans that are fighting for party loyalty because they can't stand the Democrats or whatever, they need to start putting country first. They need to start putting democracy first, because you may disagree with Democrats, but Democrats aren't a threat to democracy. You may disagree with Democrats on policies, and that's fair, but they don't threaten democracy. And so we have to elect Democrats to get majorities in the state legislatures to fix these things. Hopefully they don't abuse it and then just gerrymander the other way. Hopefully they do a little bit more. Like, for example, New York has a district commission that draws the district. It's supposed to be a nonpartisan way to do it. And so, if Democrats do this responsibly, voters need to put them in power to fix this, or our democracy is gone. This is not the first step, but is a major step in the erosion of democracy and our representative government. And that's what the point of it was behind it. And this is that willful ignorance we were talking about, that people don't see through it. Obviously, we do, because we're intelligent people. We read, we study, we care. We see what's going on. A lot of people is like, oh, who do I vote for? They go in, they pull the lever for the D or the R or whatever. They don't really give a crap. And, the Republican Party has to rid itself of this MAGA, pestilence. They just have to. And we need both parties, because we don't want a one party system. It would suck, quite frankly. But we need 2 reasonable parties. And that's what's being eroded right now. And so gerrymandered districts, whether they're Democrat or Republican, don't serve the public interest at all. I get that Democrats have to fight fire with fire. And if Republicans are going to steal seats, then Democrats have to make it even somehow, or else, look what we have in Congress right now. The Republicans do whatever they want to. They use reconciliation. They don't pass budgets. They don't pass legislation. So I get it. We have to do something about it. But we are woefully broken. We are in a perilous situation, and the American people as a whole have to come together and reject this.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm hearing all this stuff and how this went down 6-3, and 3 years ago I was actually involved with a similar case here in the federal district courts of Boston, where Seaport has grown into this. Seaport down in South Boston was just all waterfront, empty property for parking garages. And Seaport now has 30,000 something people added to it. And now they want to redo all the districts, and there was a lot going on, and it went to federal court. And I was involved in that case and producing YouTube comments because the city council meetings and stuff were being held on YouTube, and there were some things said that was being used as evidence. So they brought me in to produce the evidence for the federal judge who was overseeing the case. It was very interesting, and it was exactly the stuff that we was talking about. Real quick, before I get into this Iran stuff, the White House correspondents did a discussion. I'm really not got much to say on that, other than I'm just upset because this is like the fourth assassination attempt, and all this does is just allow Trump and his properties to get more security upgrades for free on taxpayers' dimes at all of his resorts and all that. And if people don't see it, and people keep talking about the fact that he's donating his money that he's supposed to be getting for president, I'm like, for what he's donating, he's making 10 times as much. So when he leaves the office and decides to sell his properties, guess what? He's going to sell those properties at a huge profit off the taxpayers because they've received the best of the best of the best securities and things of that sort. So I'm just upset about it. So I don't know if you guys wanted to say anything real quick on that. Nope. Ken?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob. You go first.
No, I was just going to say this.
Rob said no.
I just don't find anything worth to say about the White House Correspondents' Dinner. They should have canceled it years ago.
Ooh, there you go. Ken?
Well, Keith's a grifter. We all know he's a grifter. This is just stage, 15 of the grifting. So, no.
Right.
Nice. So, before we came on the air, and we're going to go a little over, we've got this stuff that's going on with the Strait of Hormuz, and we're being lied to. We're seeing that we're being lied to. Now, Rob's a military guy. We've talked about a lot of things on this show in regards to the military, and one of the things that we talked about that was dangerous in the military at this time was soldiers having the ability to post and share things on social media now. The White House, Hegseth and Trump were telling us that we've had nothing struck overseas, we've had nothing hit, we've had complete control of the Strait of Hormuz, all this stuff we're being told, and then we're finding out through Iran's own social media, people on their social media, we're finding out from our own soldiers, our own naval people on boats, that the stuff we're being fed is just, some of this stuff is lies. I know people were talking about the 8 soldiers who lost their lives overseas, and come to find out, I watched Hegseth get grilled on C-SPAN, and he was questioned on the fact that they put those soldiers in this facility knowing that they didn't have anything to protect themselves and things of that sort, and then they lied to the American public and kind of downplayed the strike that happened there. And now you've got these TikTok videos from soldiers showing that, no, this wasn't just some minor strike. This was a big deal. And, Rob, you were in the military, and we're seeing our government. We always knew our government lied to us with stories and things of that sort. But we're now really seeing it firsthand to the point where it's hard for me to kind of swallow the lies. So I'm going to go with you, Rob, and we're going to talk about this because this is one of the things we're seeing where Trump will say, we've got this under control, and then we don't have it under control. He had said that there were no mines in the waters of the strait, and then come to find out there were, because they turn around and contradict themselves and say, well, we just destroyed 10 minesweeper boats. Okay. A day before, you were just telling us there were no mines. So this conflict of information, Rob, and the military themselves, is this something that we have to control and shut down, or your thoughts? I'm all over the place on this.
Well, I mean, the fix is, part of the same erosion of government, erosion of democracy that we have to fix addresses this too. So, start with that. But there are two different issues. One is the conduct of the Iran war, and the second thing is the Strait of Hormuz, which is it's obviously part of the same conflict, but it's a different issue. So, because you spoke about both, you talked about the service members that were in Kuwait that were killed and injured by Iranian missile fire. And so, part of the problem is this. First of all, the military does do an excellent job of trying to equip soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, etc., with the best equipment that they have. But obviously, logistics is never a perfect thing. So, they have to prioritize where different equipment goes and what have you. And of course, when you're talking about where you can station people, not everybody is going to be in a hardened shelter, right? And so we tend to rely very heavily on our air defenses. We have excellent air defenses between the Patriot missiles and other things. The problem is they're not foolproof. And, and so when the lie that you're talking about was the fact that these, Hegseth called it a squirter, which, I mean, Secretary of Defense, start speaking like an intellect, moron. It's not a squirter, but the fact of the matter, I'll tell you, a squirter, his children. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that, you have this thing where they were put in a place that didn't have adequate, hardening, right? Because they were relying on air defenses. Well, I hate to tell you, and look, I don't like what happened, but that's not unusual, right? Not everybody's going to be in, a perfectly hardened place. In my time in Iraq, which was close to a year, in 2003, we didn't have hardened places. We didn't even have Humvee. We had soft Humvees. We had no protection. We didn't have ballistic plates in our. We went the entire war without having sufficient protection. It happens. And it's not right. I'm just saying that this isn't an isolated incident on that. Logistics is a very difficult business, and sometimes we don't have everything that we need. I don't like the way this is sounding when I say it. I'm just trying to say that, these are the challenges of war. And unfortunately, war is a very deadly business on all sides. And so I think it's a tragedy that we lost people the way that we did. I think it's a tragedy that there were lies told about it instead of the truth. But it was inevitable that we would lose people in this way, I think, is maybe the way that I wanted to say that. I'm not justifying it. I'm saying it's reality. The Strait of Hormuz is the more interesting thing, because number one, everybody since 1979 knew that if you have a conflict with Iran, the first thing they do is close the Strait of Hormuz. So for the Trump administration to say, we didn't know they were going to do that, it is the most disingenuous statement of all times. Everybody knew, not Donald Trump, because he's an ignoramus, but everybody around him, including Kegbrecht, knew that. And they just didn't tell him that, or he didn't listen. And so the fact of the matter is that, that they knew this was coming. And so today, while we were on the air, I saw something breaking. I saw the Chiron on the news program here that says Trump said that we were going to stop what we were doing by trying to escort ships. The thing that started the other day when Trump said, well, we're going to escort ships. And so that lasted about a day, maybe two. And he just said today, well, we're not doing that anymore. And it didn't say why, because obviously I just saw that on the Chiron. So I'm not able to read that until we finish our show. But the fact of the matter is, it just shows the back and forth nature of this, that we don't have a very well-defined policy. We don't have a very well-defined strategy. We don't have, we don't know what we're doing over there. I'm saying that as the leadership, not the military. The military is performing admirably, as they always do. It's the civilian leadership in the Pentagon and the White House that are causing the chaos. And so the issue is that, so what are we doing in the Strait of Hormuz? Again, everybody knew that they were going to do this. And when they close the Strait of Hormuz, they do it with mines and ships and other things. And yet knowing, because we chose to do the Iran war, we could have waited, but Trump ordered our mine-sweeping ships to Singapore, to the South China Sea area. And so that is like the epitome of incompetence in beginning a war with Iran, especially one that we chose to start. We've been in conflict with Iran. And as far as I'm concerned, we've been at war with Iran since 1979. Don't get me wrong.
Correct.
But this latest battle, this latest hostility round of hostilities we chose to start. And we should have waited until we had the damn minesweepers there. That's the first thing, because we knew that the Strait of Hormuz was going to be closed. Secondly, we started this, ship escorting thing, and the U.S. Navy, who does, great people, great equipment, they successfully got 2 American ships through the Strait of Hormuz in the first day or 2 of this program. And so Iran is correct in the sense of they launched, they attacked both ships. CENTCOM is also correct in that they didn't hit the ships. The problem is it was incredibly expensive in the number of countermeasures the U.S. Navy had to use to protect the ships, both the Navy ships and the ships they were protecting going through the strait. And so that's not feasible, right? You've heard on the news, I'm sure, everybody, that there are arguments being made that we, and by the way, to his credit, J.D. Vance is making this argument. He's saying Hegseth is not being honest with the president about it, that our supplies of these, defensive missiles, whether it's air defenses, ship defenses, all these are pretty low right now because we've been using them like they're candy. And that's Trump's, he thinks the entire military is the little green plastic men he played with as a kid. And he was probably the guy that was melting them with a with a magnifying glass. That's probably how he was playing war as a little kid. And so, you could just see him doing it. He doesn't have any respect for the military. And so the fact of the matter is they're his playthings. And so somebody got to him today and said, we can't do this. We don't have the ability to resupply those ships with defenses. Look at how much they had to fire to get through the Strait of Hormuz. So today Trump says we're not doing that anymore. Okay, I get that. Why didn't we think about that in the first place? So these are the problems. This is that there's no strategy. There's no thought. Even Keg Breath is too scared of Trump to be honest with him. J.D. Vance apparently tried to be honest on this point. I don't, I'm not in the room, but the report suggests that he tried to do it and wasn't listened to. And I'm sure he didn't try hard enough. Let's leave it at that. And then, the rest of the clown show there in Washington, is clearly not doing their jobs, because this type of incompetence by the civilian leadership really puts people's lives at risk, puts the military lives at risk. Sailors, soldiers, airmen, Marines, everybody is at risk. And you're going to have to explain that to the families, because these are people who volunteer. They all raised their right hand and they took an oath and they believe in what they do, and they're willing to go any place the president sends them and the country needs them to go to defend our country, to defend the Constitution, to defend democracy, whatever. But it has to mean something. It has to mean something, and when you do this type of chaos where you have no strategy, not a failed strategy, you have no strategy, that their sacrifice isn't going to mean anything in the end. Now, Iran is weaker in the sense of we've destroyed some of their missile production sites. We've weakened their military, but we haven't changed regimes. They still can do everything they were doing before. They can destabilize the region. They can still support terrorist groups. They can still try to enrich uranium. It'll be a little bit harder for them to do that now. But, remember, everybody swore to us left, right, and center that we obliterated. That was the word they used. We obliterated their nuclear program 6 months ago. And now we find out 2 months ago that we had to launch this attack because they were 2 weeks away from enriching uranium and making a nuclear weapon. Well, when were you lying then, or were you lying now? Because if we obliterated it a few months before, they wouldn't be 2 weeks away from a bomb. So you're lying. You have no strategy.
Exactly.
And that,
Z-Man,
that is the problem.
Z-Man's in the chat. Thank you for your service, Z-Man. He says, how bad is it that our missile supplies are running low? I've never heard of that before in the middle of a conflict.
Exactly, Z-Man. And that's because they didn't plan for it.
Actually, no offense, Z-Man, but this happens all the time when we have major conflicts. It happened in Gulf War I. One of the reasons that Norman Schwarzkopf did not want to go into Iraq, and I happen to agree with him, was he was concerned about logistics. He said, we're not going to have enough weapons if we go into Iraq for a long-term commitment. That was one of the reasons he didn't want to go in there, because he was concerned about logistics. We do not have a deep bench because it's so expensive. Which makes sense.
It's funny you say that, because when I watch these Iranian Lego videos that are being released to troll they're laughing at the fact that they're making us use all of our missiles and all of these resources, because Iran's like, you're not hurting us, we're breaking your bank, we're breaking your budget, and they're well aware of that.
Look, you need to understand what Iran's strategy is, and it's working. Their strategy isn't to win. They don't care if they win. Their strategy is to run you down. There's a very famous quote when LBJ says he was going to bomb the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese in the Stone Age, and then General Giap said, "Okay, then what? What are you going to do after you do that?"
The MAGA nitwits seem to forget that when this whole thing started, what did they tell us? This is going to be over in 2 weeks. Hegseth and Trump got up there. Remember, they said 2 weeks. We're going to be done. This is going to be over,
and we'll be out of Vietnam in 6 months. But here's the other thing that people don't understand about the Strait of Hormuz. It's not whether we have the ability to escort all the ships. We don't. I think Rob pointed that out. The point is, shipping companies are risk adverse. They're not sending their ships there to begin with. Iran's already won, not because they've been blocking the strait, it's because they convinced shippers not to send their ships. That's the important thing. And we saw this in the Reagan administration and the Bush administration when they tried to escort. We just can't do it. We don't have the resources to do it. Remember, Iran mined the strait. Mines don't require maintenance. They don't require to be fed. They don't require fuel. They don't require weapons uploads. They can sit there all day. They also have, Iran has a number of these small, fast attack boats. Very cheap, very easy to produce, and get hidden all over the place. The U.S. Navy has to be 100% successful in order to win. Iran only has to be 1% successful. That's why they're winning. And that's why you don't go into a pissing war with a goddamn skunk. Because you're going to freaking lose.
Yeah, it's Trump has now become Putin with the Ukraine. You said you were going to have this done, and now here we are. We're months in now. We're months in on this now, and you did this to help Israel, and where's Israel in all of this? They're just no.
Stop. That is blatant anti-Semitism. Israel has their own foreign policy, and Israel couldn't give a shit the U.S. didn't. They had their own thing. Israel was smart. There was selective strikes, get the freak out of Dodge. Because they knew that Iran wouldn't be willing to block the Strait of Hormuz over a couple of strikes.
So do you think Bibi told Trump that? Do you think Bibi said that this wasn't a good idea?
I don't know whether he did or not, but even if Trump asked, which I don't think he did, but Bibi probably told him, no, there's a way to deal with Iran. You do limited strikes, you hit their infrastructure, you take away their money, you screw up their oil production. You don't do a full-blown invasion because you're not going to win. Israel's been dealing with Iran since 1979. What happened was Iran backed the October 3rd attack, which really traumatized Israel, and Israel responded as they usually do by going full force in effect. You want to play? And Iran understood that was coming, and they were willing to take it because they knew they were willing to say we got enough of the population.
So Trump is on his own. Trump is on his own in this.
Trump is totally on his own. This is strictly, he was trying to distract from the Epstein files. He has what I call the G.I. Joe syndrome. Do you guys remember that cartoon from the 80s?
Yeah. One of the best cartoons out there.
Right. And every time, it would be G.I. Joe, it would be stuck against the wall, and they come with this miracle plan, and they wipe out Cobra until the next episode. That's what Trump is thinking. No. Iranians are Persians. Okay, by the way, the term Iranian, do you know what the term Iranian means in English? Aryan.
Oh, yeah, yep. I did hear that before.
They think they're the master race. Mm-hmm. They think we're all infidels. In fact, they even think other Muslims are infidels another day. So they're not going to be intimidated. They'd rather die than be intimidated. So they don't care if you burn down every single thing in Iran, they're still going to come after you.
As we saw in the movie 300.
Right.
When they lost to the Spartans. But
exactly.
They sent everything under the sun to try to wipe the, to finally kill the Spartans.
So this idea that we're going to intimidate Iran to the negotiating table ain't going to work. They may come to the negotiating table because they think it's in their best interest, and they did under Obama. Then Trump ripped up the treaty because he doesn't like treaties. But no, this is not good for the U.S. Now the Iranians are having their own problems, and we'll discuss that at a later date. But this you're not going to intimidate the Iranians with the U.S. Navy. No offense to the U.S. Navy, they're great. They do what they do, and they're very good at it. But unless we're willing to commit a major land invasion of Iran and willing to occupy the country for like 100 years, don't do this.
Anything to add to that, Rob?
No, I mean, just remember when this first started and we came on the show, I said that I was initially going to try to be supportive and I was going to let the administration make their case. And for a while, I was trying to be supportive because I believe we have been at war with Iran since they kidnapped the hostages in 1979 and interfered with our 1980 presidential election. And then all of the regional destabilization, all the terrorist support, the attack on the Marine barracks, all the different things that they're responsible for. I was initially supportive of this, but I quickly decided that you can't support something that doesn't have a plan, that doesn't have a strategy, that is being reckless with service members' lives. And that's the problem with the Trump administration, because I think any other administration, Republican or Democrat, would have at least had a strategy. We might have debated whether we should do it or not. We could have debated aspects of the strategy, the cost, whatever, but it would have been a strategy that we had something to talk about. I can't support this anymore, and I haven't for a while now because of the way it's being conducted and because of the lies. I just can't support it.
Do you feel they don't even have an exit strategy? Because I'm pretty sure most great presidents had exit strategies before they.
To have an exit strategy, you had to have a strategy. We don't have a strategy in the first place, so there isn't an exit strategy.
Ooh.
Trump is sitting there, you know, in his moments of dementia and his moments of lucidity, which are fleeting these days, just making rash decisions. And so the Pentagon is blindly carrying them out.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. I feel like there's no strategy, and if you don't have no strategy, like I said, the exit strategy, you know, if they don't have anything, it's whatever's gonna happen and how we get out of this is going to affect us for years to come. This is another thing that's going to affect us for years to come. You know, this is crazy. It's crazy stuff, and like I said, I don't know. Is there anything you guys want to add to touch base on?
No.
Nope, I'm good. We're good.
All right, so let's just want to just circle back before we close out. One of the things we didn't get to talk about, but I always have to ask Rob about. Rob, how'd you feel about your draft this year for your Giants?
Excellent.
You guys took 2 big linemen in the first round. 2, and you needed that. That was one of the things you talked about on this show. So you feel really confident this year with the decisions that they've made.
Yeah, remember the most of the time in the last year or two when we've talked about football, and I've said that the only way for the Giants to survive is for the Mara family to sell the team. They actually proved me wrong in the sense of getting John Harbaugh, and I wasn't a big John Harbaugh fan, but I do think he's a very capable coach, and he might be the right coach for the Giants right now. And so by doing that, by having a good draft, I'm not saying they're going to the Super Bowl this year because you can't, you know, I suppose it's happened, but
because he's not a Dallas Cowboys fan, that's why.
But they're going to make big strides this year. I really see it. I see the wholesale difference on that team. You have guys that actually really want to play there, and that was what was missing. There was no heart. That's why they lost some of those close games, including to Dallas. So guess what? This year, beating Dallas.
And they had an O-line. They had an O-line that resembled Swiss cheese. Yeah. And I don't think they fixed the problem, but they definitely are making a big step towards it.
Yeah, they got some beef there. So we're at 8:26, and let me get my outro banners up here, people. I got to thank everybody who's hung out with the show with us, those who have bought the beanies and things of that sort. I know it's a tease for people to see these beanies up there that are long gone. They've been sold out for a while. Those are the shows that I produce. Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor podcast. We were at the Wrestling Convention, New England Fan Fest on Saturday, so please check out those videos. Upcoming events, this Wednesday is Community Resource Day. Vendors are confirmed. That's going to be at East Junior High on Wednesday, East Middle School on Center Street. 508 Brockton Community Celebration will take place on Friday, 4 to 7, down at the I think it's the Sound Lab. Marquise Hill will be in town May 8th to speak with youth about their mental health at Venue 727 at 4 p.m. And then the Corey Langley, who was on last week, the dinner is this week. Lobster and Steak Clam Bake Fundraiser, May 9th, $100 per ticket. Brockton High is putting on their end-of-the-year musical, Chicago. It's a great event. People support our youth, support our kids. And then Ethan Barnes is a memorial ride for him that takes place on May 24th. So we want to make sure to support that. That's going to be leaving out of New Bedford. And then, as I've been talking about, Method Man, Red Man, the Locks, and State Property will be at the Agganis Arena. Bat Bus is free till June. I think it's going to be extended. That's my opinion, because they're trying to make public transportation free across the country. Family Fun with Music is every Thursday till June at the Brockton Public Library, so we're going to make sure to head down there if you have a child from 0 to 6. Save the date, the Boston Brothers Motorcycle Ride, that's July 25th. My ride, the Slingshot for Shriners to raise money for Boston Shriners, that is August 1st, rain date of August 8th. And then the Broken Chains Biker Church Car Show is August 22nd. Brockton Art Paint Nights are 7 to 9 on the last Saturday of every month. And then we have, that's it. We got to get ready to get out of here. So I'm going to go around the horn and let my guys say goodbye. So I'm going to start with Ken.
Thank all of our listeners and viewers, all 12 of you. Guys, gals, others, stay safe, stay informed. We'll see you in June.
Squid.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you found it helpful. We've already made the point about being informed. So here's the thing. Everybody, regardless of your political beliefs, needs to come together to preserve democracy, and then we can go back to fighting about politics.
Yeah, that's a you know what? That's a great point. That's a great point. We've gotten to a point where, yeah, we talked about in this show, and I'm there with you. Make sure to check out these guys over at The Corridor, where Rob posts different columns all week, every week, and during the month. So make sure to go over there, like The Corridor, give them a like, and check it out. And we got a lot of stuff coming down the pipe, but I got to thank everybody for coming on the show, hanging out with us. It is Memorial Day is coming up at the end of the month, and we'll see these guys. We'll be back here in June. SpongeBob, do me a favor. Take us home.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinista1 production hosted by Sinista1.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine, but your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I miss those days, which was easy. If only I made it, this don't repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, but y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak ass hoes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I'll probably end up laughing, cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip, I don't need that shit, cause I got my own now. I get hurt, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything, I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.